Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, and more. Today, we are joined by the founder of Jeanne Designs and the author of 2 Feet In Lessons from an All-In Life, Jeanne Collins. Jeanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt, for having me. I'm excited to get to talk to you.
Oh, you know what? I'm excited too. After reading your book, which I just finished up, got so many questions. So I'm very excited. Before we get too far in, though, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 security operations center, we monitor your computers, networks, and cloud accounts using a combination of AI and highly skilled cybersecurity technicians to detect any signs of attack or intrusion. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Okay, Jeanne. So love the book. Just
Thank
finished
you.
there we go. That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. So loved it. Really, really fun. I love the approach you took. I'm so used to these, business books and self-help books. Very rarely do I get the time to kind of dive into a novel, and you delivered a really great story here. So thank you for that. I got to ask, what was the inspiration? Why tell your story like this and now? Because I loved it. It was so much fun, though.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I didn't set out to write a book, in full transparency. I had always said, I have an interior design business, and I had always said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have like a cocktail book, like maybe in 5 years, to have something to be on the table that like has my projects in it. And wouldn't that be kind of fun? So I didn't set out to write a book, and I definitely didn't set out to write a memoir and kind of spill the guts of my life to the public. But I got an email one day from a company that was doing a free hour-and-a-half Zoom call about being an author and writing a book. And I kind of like scanned the email and just kind of kept going. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait, let me look at that again. And I had the time on my calendar that day. And I sort of was feeling like, it's kind of moments like that where something makes you pause for a minute that I've learned I need to look into it more. And so I decided, you know what? Why not? It's free. Why not? I'll sign up for it. Hour-and-a-half podcast about an hour-and-a-half Zoom, about writing a book. And by the time the hour and a half was over, I had mapped out an entire book. And I had themes, chapters, subchapters, subjects. I had no idea. It's like brainstorming. You do this mind mapping and they give you these circles and you just write. You literally just write for 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, I had an entire book. And I thought, wow, I think there is something interesting about my life. I'm not famous, but I think there's something interesting about my life that people can relate to. And if someone can get motivated and inspired by the challenges I've had and how I've overcome those, that would be really great. That would make me feel like I was giving back. So I committed to writing a book. I hired a book coach. I committed I was going to write every single day from 5 to 6. And I did. And a year later, I had, written 3 different versions of my book into the final one that you just read and self-published my book. And that was the end of July. And so I didn't set out to do it, but I'm so glad I did.
Wow. Well, that was either a fantastic Zoom or you had a book and you dying to come out.
I didn't really know I had it. Right. People always say like, oh, your story is so inspiring. Your story is so interesting. And you're like, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Like you kind of just move on, and that's so kind of everyone. And people are just being nice. But when I really had to think about lessons that people could learn and how they could live a better life, because I really felt at the time that I am living my best life, and I still feel that way a year later. And so I felt like, wow, if people could have a little bit of what I have and learn from me to get a little closer to that in their lives, then that would feel really great. It would feel like I had a purpose. And I was really inspired by that.
I love it. I mean, it's such a fun, easy read. I mean, it really is like sitting down with a friend and hearing her story. You're going through it. You're like, oh, you get tied up into the characters. You know, love them, hate them. You know,
You do.
and it's funny because I don't often feel like I'll feel inspired by the latest self-help book or the business book. I'm like, that's a great idea. Seldom do I feel a visceral reaction to to a character, and I'm like, oh, you bastard, and I'm like,
Uh-uh.
no, don't do it,
You're like,
and I'm just going along
no.
with no. Anyways, it was so much fun. So I mean, it's not like a who done it, so I feel like we won't be giving away the plot
No.
of the book or the who done it portion, but
Yeah.
it's, you tell the story of your life, kind of, I think, pretty well here in the book. Can you tell those who haven't had the pleasure of reading it yet, kind of the origin story, the kind of how it all started and got you here?
Yeah. So I decided to write my book after many iterations. Anyone who's written can tell you you don't end up where you start. So I decided to write it as a memoir, a chronological memoir of my life, starting from when I was young. And it has the analogy to building a house. And so the earlier chapters start with your foundation. And that's a lot. We all have foundations. And you could have a foundation in a work career, but you can also have a foundation in life, and that's your childhood. And so I go through the phases of building a house, and it's the foundation, and then it's the framing, and then it's the finish work, and then it's the design. And so I relate the different stages of that throughout my book. I talk about everything from how I was raised, being divorced parents, poorest kids in a very wealthy town, low self esteem, to my career path. I started working when I was 15, lied about my age in order to get a job, and I've been working ever since.
Love it.
I got fired twice. I got fired when I was 50. I had a big executive job in advertising and had been doing that for 22 years and got fired. Never thought I would. I've been married and divorced twice. I have been a single parent to my 17-year-old. I'll give away a little bit, since she was born. So most people don't go and file for divorce when they're pregnant, but hi, yep, I did. And so that's a little crazy, but it was the right thing and the timing was right. And so I talk about understanding when the timing is right. And then I started interior design business 4 years ago, and then wrote a book a year ago. So it's been an interesting path. And then there's one character who's woven throughout my book from a romantic perspective. He sort of has come in and out of my life, so it makes it a little bit interesting. I've dated people who are race car drivers and alcoholics and all kinds of things. And then also talk a lot about being a woman and being an executive and having to balance motherhood and parenting and being an executive and playing in the boys club, and then also just overall wellness and health, and realizing that the stress sometimes of life can really make you sick and you don't realize it until you step away. So there's a lot in there about mindset and journaling and, manifesting things and exercise and eating well and things that I'm really passionate about that I think are really important in my life. So we go through up until about 2 years ago, and that's where the book stops.
I love it. And well, the character that you talk about, who's weaved throughout, is the one that really got it really got me.
Ah,
But I loved it, and you tell the story just so well, and it's so engaging, such a great story, and clearly you look very, very healthy and fit. So let me ask you, as because I don't feel like that was I I loved kind of learning the lessons and hearing the story, and that was fun. But the tying in health and wellness and everything, those lessons that you've learned, and I think this is really interesting because um, I consider myself kind of a student of the world. I have tried just about everything, you name it, and you look online, and I'm in terms of diet and exercise. There is so much information, so much good information, so much bad information, so much misinformation, and getting that right. I think a lot of people, one, don't have the I call it tenacity that I do, where I'm just constantly trying new things and figuring out what works for me.
right.
And I think a lot of people will get some information, be like, oh, that works for them. Let me
Yes.
try it. And then it
Yes.
fails
And then it
miserably.
doesn't.
And then they're kind
Yes.
of done. And then, or they'll
Mhm.
do something and it's really hard. And they have this yo-yo, with their, it kind of, with their diet, their health, everything.
Yeah.
So, um, can you kind of share some of your lessons, your ideas? What is it that you've discovered? Because whatever it is, it's clearly working. You figured out, some stuff. What can you share with us?
I did, but it's also always changing. And so what's so funny is, I was vegetarian and almost vegan for 2 years. And then all of a sudden that wasn't working for my body anymore. So I just recently had to go back to eating fish because I could not get enough protein in my diet for how active I am. And so it is never one size fits all. And it also is never one size fits all for the time and the stage you are in your life. Also, you premenopause, menopause, postmenopause, like, you know, pre before you have a baby, then after you have a baby, it's like it's different at every stage. So I think what people need to recognize and also cut themselves a little bit of slack, because that's why what worked for someone isn't necessarily going to work for them. And what worked for you 5 years ago might not work for you today. So I think the things for me that have always been really, really important, and I think if you just make it kind of simple, is exercise. I exercise every day, whether it's just going for a walk around the block or hardcore weightlifting. The older I've gotten, the more I lift weights, because that is more important to maintain your muscle mass
Yep.
as you get older. So I've switched from hardcore running and hardcore cardio, which I did when I was younger. If you weren't dripping in sweat, it was like you didn't have a good workout. Now I work out completely differently. And now it's bar class and Pilates and weight training 4 days a week. And yes, I still get cardio in, but it's not nearly the same if it's 20 minutes or half an hour walking on the walking pad on my standing desk. That's great. And that has worked really well for my body. So exercise, sleep. I did not realize until I got fired how important sleep was. I sleep more now than ever in my life. And people are always like, you sleep for 8 hours? I'm like, I do. And I cannot tell you how important that is, and having a nighttime routine so you actually fall deeply asleep. So prioritizing sleep for yourself. And then eating. I'm a huge proponent of clean, simple. The fresher the ingredients that you can get, the better. Avoiding all processed foods, avoiding fast food, avoiding soda, things like that. If you just eliminate those types of things and just stick to real food, you look at people that talk about the Mediterranean diet, like those people are still drinking wine. They just eat real food. And
Yeah.
so the closer you can modify your eating to just real food, whether your real food is you love beef and you're doing real quality grass-fed beef, or your real food is you love fish, or you want to be a vegan, just eat real food and try to have a well-balanced diet with protein, fat, and fiber. And just making those changes, as soon as you start to see a little tweak and a little change, I think people will realize like it's not as hard as you think. But you have to be willing to tweak, and you have to be willing to experiment too.
Yeah. Well, let
Yeah.
me ask you, how about when it comes to, and I think that it's really important, the quality of the food that you take in. I mean, garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, that's just
100%.
there's no way you're going to turn chips into muscle. That's just not how it
It's not
works.
happening.
I mean,
No,
those protein chips are kind of cool, but it's still meh. All
it's
right.
still processed.
It's
Correct.
totally. So let me ask you, in terms of getting portion control, what's your focus on that? Is it something where you're able to just kind of listen to your body at this point? Do you have a method? Do you count calories, macros? What's your take on that whole bit?
Yeah. So to me, counting calories and macros, I felt was like way too challenging and overwhelming. Is something I started a couple years ago that I do love, and swear by, is intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, for any of your listeners who don't know what it is, it means you stop eating at a certain time and you don't eat again until a certain time the next day. And I started doing it for 12 hours, and it was like kitchen's closed and I only drink water until 12 hours later. And at first what I found was, wow, when my daughter is eating ice cream at 9 o'clock, I'm not having a bite or 2 bites. Or if she's making popcorn, or she orders Burger King at 10:30 because she's 17 and dances 30 hours a week and can eat Burger King at 10:30. I
Right.
cannot. So it stopped me from doing those sorts of things. And then it stopped me from snacking in the morning when she was eating breakfast. I'm not finishing her bagel anymore.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Like the weight came off so fast. Like, stop eating the kids' yogurt. Don't do that. Don't finish their plate. Don't eat the last bites of their pizza. And so, it was intermittent fasting. And then I've stretched out now. I normally go about 16, 17 hours every day. But I do drink
Good.
tea in the morning, and I drink a lot of water. And so it's really hydrating your body and recognizing that. So I find intermittent fasting helps me because it condenses the amount of hours in which I can eat. And so, and it's not it's saying like, oh, you can only eat during those hours, but it's just saying, okay, if we're going to have 3 meals a day and I condense them down to, 9 hours, how much food am I really going to eat in 9 hours
Yeah.
if I'm paying attention to, am I full?
Yeah.
And not eating just because it's breakfast time or just because it's lunchtime. And so learning to really listen to my body and say, am I really hungry? Or am I doing what I do because it's the routine and it's lunchtime and we're supposed to eat now? And how dare I not eat?
Yeah.
So that I found has been tremendous. When it comes to, I'm sorry, I might have lost you there for a second.
Nope.
Okay, sorry. When it comes to portion control, I did hire a chef and had some meals delivered to my house, and I was like, wow, that's what I'm supposed to be eating. Holy cow. And there are a lot of those services out there, and you only need to do it for a week to just
Yeah.
realize, like, that's supposed to be dinner. Holy cow. It's in like this tiny little Pyrex dish. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And
Hmm.
so that's all it takes is just a little bit of knowledge and exposure to what a portion should be. Um, but if you're sticking to vegetables and lettuce and things like that, like you can have a lot of lettuce, but be careful about the salad dressing. So I tend to, if I'm going to have it on a bigger plate, it will be almost mostly grains with just like a fistful of protein, and that's it. And I will find that it's a lot of food if you are making a big salad and have lots of vegetables in it, but you just be careful. You don't add cheese and you don't add too much dressing. It's amazing how full you can actually get and not feel like you're eating like a bird.
Yeah, I think the meal service places are underrated, and I love your approach there of, hey, even if you just do it for a week, the aha moment happens pretty quickly. You're like, oh, I can make these myself for for less.
For
If you've
less.
got the time and the inclination and you prefer making your own meals, but the lessons you learn from that's the size, not what you get in a restaurant,
Right.
is I think very eye opening for people.
It
The other thing I
is.
want to get your opinion on this was I know you drink a lot of water. I drink an almost laughable amount of water a day.
Yeah,
And so it's almost a running bit in the house that, I drink so much water.
I do too.
And everything else for that matter. But what I found and I thought was really interesting, I'd heard for many, many years, drink drink a glass of water before you start eating, and that helps you feel fuller, and then you eat your meal, and then it helps with that sort of kind of. But what and I don't know why it took me so long, but I found that if I actually drink, for me it's a little more because I'm 6'4", 205 pounds.
Right.
I'm a big guy who works out a lot, and so for if I drink like 16, 18 ounces of water, and I take a bite, and I eat, and I take a drink, take a bite, take a drink as I go through my meal. And it really started with the meal prep service. It came and I'm like, that's it. Okay. How am I going to slow down
How
and
am
do
I
this for
going to
20
send
minutes?
that
Like,
out? Right.
okay. And so I got to the point where I'm trying to drag this thing out for 20 minutes till your brain says, hey, you're full, right? To the message
Right.
goes. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? I'm not one, because I had all this time in the army where they trained you go in, you've got 5 seconds to eat,
Right. Clean your
and
plate,
then
get it all
clean your
down.
plate and go,
Yep.
and you're off. And so speed eating was almost, it was just the norm forever. And you can
Yeah,
eat a lot of food when you're eating really fast.
you
So
can.
I say all that to say that when I started doing drink, eat, drink, eat, and over 20 minutes, and then the interesting part was the way that I felt full was comfortable,
Right.
unlike when you'd get full, normally, and you're like, oh, I had too much, and
So
it's
much,
20
right?
minutes
A
of
huge bowl of
pain.
pasta. You're like,
Yeah,
what was I thinking? I should have stopped
100%.
5 minutes ago.
And it's just
Yeah.
funny how hard it is to come across these easy. I heard it before, but
Right.
never in a way that I had to experience it myself. I'm maybe a
Hmm.
slow learner, but
Right.
kind of curious if you had a similar is water the same for you when you eat?
So it's so funny that you say that because you started this by saying there's so many different pieces of information out there that it makes it really hard for people to know what to follow and what to do. So I actually do the opposite of that because I had been taught by a nutritionist not to drink very much while I eat because it dilutes my food and it makes it so my body ingests less of the nutrients of the food because it's all watered down in my stomach. Whether it's
Hmm.
true or not, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But same problem as you had. So what I did is I started saying, okay, I get tons of magazines and I read tons of books. I was like, I'm going to read while I eat. And
Nice.
so that has slowed me down. And
Ah,
so I might drink my glass of water before I eat, but I won't be drinking it while I'm eating. But the interesting thing about that is, I love wine. And so like when this nutritionist told me this, I'm like, but like I go out to eat and I have like 2 glasses of wine with dinner. Are you telling me that's not a good idea? I'm like, it kind of goes hand in hand. And she's like, no, that's actually not a good idea. You're watering down your food and you shouldn't be drinking that much wine anyway. And wine has so many calories and sugar and you're in your 50s and you need to switch to something cleaner like vodka or tequila. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like that
So
doesn't
you
sound like
fired your
fun.
nutritionist,
So
and
I'm
then
like,
what
that
happened?
doesn't sound like fun. I'm like, that doesn't sound like fun. But she's right in so many ways because I recently like really did make a commitment to cutting back on the wine. And it's been amazing how I'm sleeping better and I crave sugar less after eating meals. Now I still love it. I had a glass of wine like a week and a half ago and I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm eating candy. Like this is so good because I just love wine. It's not about the alcohol. I love the wine,
Wow.
love pizza. But I know my body doesn't really like pizza. And so the more you get in tune with your body, the more you can figure out. So, like I figured out for myself, if I have pizza at night, I end up going to bed with huge stomach cramps. But if I have pizza at lunch where I'm moving and I have time for my body to actively digest the gluten, then I feel so much better. But if I have it right before, if I have it at dinner, then when I go to bed, I haven't moved enough for my body to digest the gluten in it. And so then that's not good. So I'm like, okay, fine. No more pizza for dinner. But if I want pizza, we're having it for lunch. Okay, great.
Love it.
Okay,
That's
great.
awesome.
And
Yep.
it's trial and error. Like I've read more books and more magazines now that at least for lunch, like I'll sit down for lunch because I'm normally by myself and I won't be on my computer and I won't watch TV. And I'll say, you know what? I'm going to eat lunch and I'm going to make it through one magazine.
Yeah.
And then
You
it
know,
slows the pace down.
it's amazing to me how little we actually know about the science of nutrition. Like we
Oh,
know very, very little.
so
And
little. It's
it's
hard.
shocking because it's so important. And
Yeah.
yet we clearly don't know anything. There's a lot of, crazy ideas. And I think I've tried, 95% of them
Right.
firsthand to see, does that work?
Does
Nope.
that work? Of course.
Turns out
And that's
snorting
why
your
it's
food is
so,
not a good
yes.
idea.
And that's why it's so confusing for people because there's so much information that they don't know what to believe.
Yep.
And so I always just say, you know what? Try to keep it simple. Simple, simple. Move, sleep, and try to eat pure, as organic, pure natural food as you possibly can. And if
Can't
you
go wrong
start
there.
there, you will see changes in your body. And then you can shift to the other things like portion control and calories and where does alcohol fit and all these other things, or how often can I have carbs? And it's like carbs are not bad. It's just understanding how your body digests things and even doing simple things like a food sensitivity test. You can order
Yeah.
those online. It's, $200. You prick your finger. They send you the kit. You prick your finger with the blood and you send it off. And you'd probably be surprised. Most people would be surprised to realize you're not allergic to it, but your body doesn't necessarily digest it the way that someone else might. And
Oh
so for
yeah, 100%.
$200, that's like really valuable information.
I could see it. I mean, I think it's kind of like it's funny because I recently and sadly I had to move to readers.
Welcome
And
to the club.
no, yeah, here I'll dump. Yeah, so I got these readers, and it was so funny because I was like, oh wait a second, I can things are clear. They're
You can see now.
but I didn't realize how much I was struggling to read. Just so I was like, oh, maybe it's because it's late at night, you're getting ready for
Mhm.
bed, and so your eyes are just tired. And then I put these on, I'm like, oh
Like,
wow, I could just
whoa.
through stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And my eyes aren't getting tired. But I think the funny part is we don't realize how much we struggle with things because it's normal for us. So our
Right.
brain, our mind just says that's normal, totally
Right.
fine. And
Yes.
I think that the same applies to those food sensitivities. So it's such a smart thing to find out, because you may be struggling with something, and once you just remove that one thing, it's like, oh, you've just dropped 20 pounds
Oh,
off out of
so
your
much.
pack.
That it's
And
true. And you
yep,
do. You lose the weight right away. You lose the bloating right away, the inflammation, the aches. The first time I did it was because I had such severe back pain, I couldn't get out of bed.
yeah.
And ended up going to a nutritionist who was like, so your back is actually fine. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you actually have serious food sensitivities. And like, I showed up and like my foot was swollen. He's like, what'd you have for breakfast? I'm like, I had yogurt, I had coffee with cream. And turns out I have a high sensitivity to dairy and to coffee. And I eliminated he told me it was painful at the time. I had to eliminate everything, all meat products, all
Oh,
dairy, all soy, all we took out gluten in the beginning, and within a week, I had no back pain, like none,
wow.
none. It was unbelievable. I was like,
Wow.
wow. That is incredible. And he's like, you don't understand how much your body is holding on to in like a stressful situation, because these foods are things that your body can't necessarily digest the same way as others. Like I love eggs. Still, I have a huge sensitivity to eggs. I used to eat them every single day.
How about that?
And
That's
it's like now that
fantastic.
I don't eat them, I still eat them once a week, but it's like, but now that I don't eat them all the time, it's amazing how my body just feels so much better. It's like I lost 10 years off my life when I was eating them because I couldn't
Love
move.
it.
Everything hurt.
Yeah,
It was all just swelling from my body not being able to process these foods.
very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I think you've got an interesting take on health and interior design. So you've got a an interior design company that you started 3-ish,
Mhm.
4 years
Four
ago now,
years,
right?
4 years
4
ago.
years.
Yeah. It's just about 4 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
can you share with us your take on how is interior design and health? How are those related and connected? Um, and isn't interior design just about looking pretty?
Yeah, no, it's so not. I mean, it is, right? For a lot of designers, it is about making it look pretty, because that's what we do. We come in and we make houses look beautiful, and we make them look like what you see in a magazine. But my approach to interior design is a little bit different because of my interest and my passion in overall wellness and in mindset and in energy, and really understanding that, how you feel within your home and how your home makes you react and feel and stress really can make a huge impact on your life, not just it being beautiful and not just it functioning. So to give you an example, and when I meet with new clients, I always talk about this, and I do talk about it when I speak publicly, and everyone always loves this story. So I will ask my clients, and I will ask the audience when I speak, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you see when you open your eyes? And is that a beautiful piece of artwork that means something to you or inspires you? Or when you look up in the ceiling, are you looking at a beautiful light fixture or a paint color or wallpaper, for example? I have wallpaper. I have black and white geometric wallpaper on my ceiling. It's awesome. Or are you looking at a pile of laundry? And when I ask that, most of the time, about 90% of the audience will chuckle because they're in the looking at a pile of laundry category. And I say to them, see, this is how I want you to look at interior design differently, because that is what you are telling your body and your brain is the right way to start your day, as opposed to thinking about your senses and thinking about what's the first thing you see. And are you going to take a pause? And I have a beautiful black and white photograph on the wall in my bedroom that I look at that has significant meaning to me. And so it's like, if that's how I start my day, as opposed to looking at the laundry, it is a much more uplifting way to start the day. Or I'll say, what's the first thing that your feet feel when you get out of bed? What are you touching? Is the floor cold? Is it a rug that you can't stand? Is it a rug that your children have ruined? Is it a hard tile? Like, what is that first experience that your feet get as they touch the floor? Because your feet support you all day long, and it's so important. So, how do you treat them as you start your day? And so then people start to really think, and I'm like, then we move into lighting, and we move into the bathroom, and we move into, the mudroom. What does it look like when you first open the door out of the garage? What are you walking into in your home? And but all of a sudden, people start to think differently. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not just about me making look pretty, and it's not just about it having a greater sense of function. It's about me trying to change the energy within your home, and to also make my clients aware of that energy and think differently about their environments, and also think differently about themselves and make themselves more of a priority within their home. So it's not just a task and a job. And then once we start to do that with design, then I'll be like, so I put this reading chair over here. And you want to know why? Because every single person, whether you have a huge house or a tiny little apartment, should have somewhere where you can go sit, and there's a do not disturb sign all the way around you. And it's a signal to your brain that it's time to pause. Doesn't matter. It can just be a pillow on the floor next to your bed, but it tells your brain over time as you sit there that this is how we pause, and this is how we wind down a little bit. And it could be all of 5 minutes in that chair, and that can be it. You can meditate, you can journal, you can read, you can look out the window, you can just do absolutely nothing if you want. But teaching your body to just pause and be calm, and giving yourself spaces within your home to do that, most people don't think that way. And so what I bring to the table as a designer is I think that way. And so as I design spaces, I start to do that. I'll be like, oh, this hallway, well, here, we're going to create this like cool little reading bench, and you've got great lighting, and we're doing this and that, and great pillows, and just envision yourself here with a cup of coffee, and like just sit here for 5 minutes and realize when you get up, you're going to be really happy. You're going to be much happier, and you're going to be calmer too. So
I
that's
love
kind
it.
of wellness and interior design. It's like interwoven. I do it with everything that I do. Color, Color is another really important one. People don't give color enough thought. Everyone's just like, well, is the trend to have color? I'm like, it's not about what's on trend. It's about how does color impact you? Color is emotional, and people have emotional attachments to color. And so like, I love yellow. I have yellow in my sunroom because my grandmother loved yellow. But lots of people can't stand yellow. My painter is like, can we get rid of the yellow? I'm like, no, I love the yellow. It's in my sunroom. To me, that reminds me of my grandmother. It makes me really happy. You might not like yellow. That's okay. It's not your house. It's mine. Like, it's
Right.
fine. But people don't realize. And like, back to the yellow, I have one of my first projects was to take a double story family room, and it had all this yellow wood everywhere, like beams across the ceilings, all this yellow wood everywhere. The floors were yellow wood. There's yellow wood trimming all the windows, and they had a massive brown sectional. It was awful. And so we changed it. The whole room became black and white. We added extra windows. All the woodwork got painted white, and the floors got painted a gray washed white. And when we were done, all the furniture got taken out. It was all white, all zen. They had 3 kids, 2 dogs. Didn't matter. It was all performance. The whole room became white and light gray. And when it was done, the husband said to me, he goes, I never realized how stressed that yellow wood made me feel. And now I walk into this room and I can feel my shoulders drop. It feels zen. Like, you talked to me like about this zen room, and I kind of laughed at you thinking you were kind of crazy. He's like, but I feel it now. I walk into this room and this room makes me happy. It makes me relax. And now I realize the yellow and brown was stressing me out. I'm like, see, look at that. The power of color.
That's wild. And
Cool, right?
people, it really, it's super cool. And as you talk about the story of, the idea of paying attention to those things, like what is your experience first thing in the morning? How do the first thing your feet feel? And that all those little things, they add up. So,
They do.
I mean, it's funny, and I don't know why. No, I do know why. So as you told the story of the yellow and how stressed out that made the person feel, the most relevant thing to me, it wasn't even color. It was actually that my Apple Watch. And which is funny is I run an IT and cybersecurity company. And so I'm very connected.
Right.
We got a lot going on. And I always tell people that you've got to you cannot just use technology and let it dictate how you use it. You
Right.
have to dictate how it's going to. And oddly enough, one thing I failed to kind of control really was my Apple Watch. I didn't realize that how much it was interacting with me throughout the day. How many times we get
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
checking,
Right. Yeah.
until I finally, got out of the Apple Watch phase and into real watches. And it became one of these things where it was so peaceful, and it was such a small thing. And as
Yeah.
you tell the story of these little things, and
Little
it's
things.
amazing how
Yeah.
much peace that one little thing brought me. Now, it brought me a lot of peace when I moved to it, because it took away the dings and the actual dings and the
Right.
rings. My phone
Yep.
doesn't ring. My computers don't ding
Right.
at me.
Sure.
And so it was
Yes.
quiet, and that was nice relief for my ears.
Right.
But it became this mental noise that
Right.
was, I guess, stressing me,
Stressing
like the
you out.
yellow
You
was
didn't
this
realize
guy.
it until you took it away.
Yeah.
And then you
So,
realized, wow, it's so much calmer. And oh, I haven't paid attention to my phone. And where did I actually leave that phone? And
and
that's
I
when you
can
realize, like,
imagine
wow, I've disconnected a little. And isn't that nice?
100%. And I can't
Mhm.
imagine how difficult it is for, like, I couldn't imagine designing a space. Like, forget about it. Like, thinking about the colors. And so,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't imagine designing a lot of things. So
Right.
I don't know. How do you get to that place? Did you just kind of stumble upon it? Were you like, did you always want to design space? Did it come naturally? How did that work for you?
Yeah, it's such a strange story. So I know, I mean, I had been a sales executive. I had been in sales, right? I'd been in sales working for ad tech and working for consumer packaged goods companies and couponing companies for 22 years. But when I bought my first house by myself, it was about 8 years ago, and I embarked on doing a lot of work. And so I hired a contractor. I did a bunch of construction, blew out this wall, that wall, changed this, changed that. And I got really into it. And then I was like, this is really fun. And then I started helping some friends and helping some family members. And so when I got fired right before I turned 50, I just kind of thought to myself, I'm a single mom. I worked 22 years in advertising sales. I probably will work for another 20 years. And that's a long time. And I better love it, because I'm tired of not loving it. And if I have to work for 20 more years, wow, imagine what I could create. And so I did a ton of networking, journaling, reading, trying to figure out, what do you like? What do I, and so I spent time figuring out not only what do I like, but what do I want my days to be like, and not focusing on the task of the job, because I think we get so stuck in the box of the career that we're in that we can't see outside that box. And so I really focused on, what did I want my life to be like? What do I want my days to be like? I didn't want to travel anymore. I wanted to be home for my daughter. I wanted to, you know, potentially work for myself and be my own boss. I wanted to feel like I was giving back and had a purpose, and it wasn't just about, selling shampoo products. And out of all of that, I realized, like, wow, I have a huge passion for construction and interior design. And wow, if I could do that, I think I would really love that. And then I just, like my book says, I jumped 2 feet in, and I was like, okay, starting a company. And, out we go to LegalZoom and an LLC, and reached out to the Small Business Association and got a free business coach because I had no idea what I was doing. Um, and just dove all the way in. And I think over time, at first I was like, I'm not really a creative person. But what I realized is I actually really am. I just didn't let it out. And so for most of my clients, I see their space the minute I walk into it. So I have the ability, and most artists and most designers will say this, they can walk into a space and they can see the finished product when we walk in. And so I can walk into a space and I can see what the room can be, and the potential for a room or the potential for a house. And so my job is to take what's in my mind and match it with the family that has to live in that house, and how they want to live, and their lifestyle, and what's unique about them, and then drive us together to get to the end point. But part of the fun of the journey is me seeing it, and then seeing how close we get to my vision at the end after I've customized it to them. And normally it's pretty close.
I love that. So
Yeah.
you said part of this was not traveling. So your ideal client is in what area? What's your ideal client look like?
Yes. Oh, I love talking about this. So my ideal client, ideally lives in Metro New York area. Just because I do like to spend a lot of time with my clients, especially if it's a construction project. I think it's really important to be there as frequently as you can be, to be on site with the contractors, and with their subs. I think the hands-on approach yields a better resulting project. It doesn't mean you can't work anywhere, you can. But and I can design in any style. All interior designers are trained to design in any style, but we all have our favorites. So I tend to like comfortable modern. And my ideal client actually is who I used to be. And so my ideal client is mostly entrepreneurs and business executives, because I get them and I understand them, and I walk the walk and talk the talk, and I know exactly what their life is like. And so the way I bring the business approach to what I do, plus the wellness approach, we just tend to connect really quickly. And so those tend to be my favorite projects to work on. People who want beautiful things, know they don't have the skill set to get to the end result, want to trust someone to come in and stretch them a little bit too. That's why we're there. We're there to stretch them outside the boundaries of the things that they might think they normally like. And then all of a sudden you show them something and you show them how it all goes together, and like, huh, that's actually really cool. I'm like, I don't want your living room to look like anybody else's living room. It needs to look like you. And so that means every space is unique. And so when you go to like my website, for example, none of my projects look the same. And that is what I like about design. I don't want all my spaces to look the same. I want them to be unique for the people who live in that home, because everyone is different. And so everyone should have a different take on it, what they like with colors and furniture styles. And everyone's in different life stages, with children, without children. And so every space should look different.
That's awesome.
It's
Now,
fun.
that is actually a perfect way to end the show. But we got to a point where you had a quote, and I don't even know if it's a quote, but you said in your book at the very beginning, and this is not the best way to end the show, but I did want to bring it up much earlier, and it didn't
Sure.
work in. So I'm gonna
Okay,
go
go
back
ahead.
and bring this up.
Yeah.
You said the less we think of ourselves, the less the world must think of us,
Yeah.
which I don't know how much thought you put into that, but I Googled it. I was like, oh, is that that's a great quote. I mean, that's a great thing. And it's actually, it gets very profound, very deep the more you think about it.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Mhm.
it's just in the middle of a paragraph. It wasn't
Yep.
something you were like trying to
Mhm.
highlight.
No,
Can you tell us about
it's in
this?
the
Was this
prologue, which is
something
one of
that
my
was
favorite. Yeah, it's in
profound
the
for you?
it
Or is
is,
it?
because a lot of my book is about learning to make yourself a priority and giving yourself permission. And so I think it's really important, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're trying to start a business, give yourself permission to invest in yourself, and give yourself permission to fail as well. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. People have been fired, businesses haven't succeeded. Like it's not, You're not a horrible human. But if you don't try, you never will. And so I talk a lot in my book, and I talk a lot when I speak about the importance of learning to give yourself permission and to make yourself a priority. And making yourself a priority doesn't make you selfish, and it doesn't make you a narcissist. What it does is it says, if you don't take care of you first, it's like when you get on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first. There's a reason for this, folks. So it's getting people to change their mindset around making themselves a priority. And that might be as simple as giving yourself half an hour every day that you used to give to your family that you now are walking on the treadmill. Great. Or you're reading a book. Great. But give yourself permission to make yourself a priority. And after you do it a few times, it gets easier and easier and easier, because if you don't make yourself a priority and treat your body like it is so important and so special, it's the only one you get. With what goes in tells you how do you feel about your body, the food you put in. You talked about it earlier. So it's all about, if you don't feel that way about yourself, how do you expect the world to ever value you and cherish you and treat you the way that you deserve to be treated if you can't first treat yourself that way? And so I talk a lot about that to try to help people see just tiny little ways that they can make small changes in their lives to start to feel like they are making themselves a priority and not putting everybody else in life first. Because it's really easy to not do it as we just churn through life of work and the job and the kids and the this and the that and the family. And it's hard, but you can do it with little baby steps. So I try to give people tools and tricks and ways to do that. And then it compounds over time. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm saying no to that coffee. I don't want to go to that coffee. I want to go work out instead. And guess what? That's okay. That's good.
awesome.
You made yourself a priority. You went and you exercised, and that is a good thing that you took care of yourself, because no one else can do that for you.
Well, that's an even better place to end. But let me, before we do, can you tell everybody where they can find, oh, that's not the book. There we go. That's the cover. Where they can get a
That's the
copy
cover.
of your book, where they can find out more about you and your design firm.
Yeah. So the book is called 2 Feet In: Lessons from an All-In Life. It's a memoir. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it anywhere online that you would order books. It's available in all formats. And I also recorded the audio version of it, so you can listen to me for 5.5 hours if you want. I'm told it's actually pretty good. And so anywhere you get an audio book, you can download it there. So definitely go read it, write a review. I would love to hear from you. And then my design business is called Jermar Designs. It's JERMAR Designs. And I'm on Instagram, very active. I post almost every day. You can find me at jermardesigns.com. You can email me through my website. So reach out. I encourage people, read the book, reach out. I'd love to hear from people and hear, what they learned from my story, or how I helped them, or how they could connect. It reminds me of why I did it in the first place. So don't be shy. Reach out.
Awesome. Jeanne, thanks so much for coming on. This was great.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Matt, for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.